friends, it's Susan Nunamaker, your trusted Clemson area realtor, and we need to talk. We need to talk about pre-approval when you are buying a home. All right, I have had several things come up lately that has led me to realize that you and I need to have a conversation. Why is pre-approval so important when you begin to shop for a new home? Y'all, this should be like the second step. The first step is to call me. We'll have a conversation about the process for shopping for a new home. But your second step is to talk to your lender. And if you don't have a great lender, but you need a great lender when you're buying a home, I'm not talking about your local bank. If you don't have a great lender, I'm more than happy to connect you and introduce you to great lenders in our area. Pre-approval not only allows you to figure out what kind of budget you're working with, and I know there's a few people out there who think that as soon as the agent hears what your top dollar is you can spend, then that's what your agent's going to find you. Not if you have a good agent that truly cares about her clients. That's not how this works, y'all. In fact, if I hear from you, this is what I want to spend, and then the lender happens to say, but you could go up to this, we don't go up to that unless you tell me to. I'm sticking with what you told me you could spend, as long as it's under what the lender said you could spend. So please don't think that an agent knowing what you can spend is a bad thing. Y'all, it's like trying to help a patient, a doctor trying to help a patient, and just going on what you said the symptoms were. When you just think you know how much you can spend, please don't do that to yourself or your agent, because it's going to cause a lot of heartache for everybody involved if all this time and energy is spent looking at homes and dreaming about homes and researching homes, and then come to find out none of those homes were within budget. It is going to hurt your heart when you go to make an offer, and I say to you, you need pre-approval before we can even put together an offer, and then everything explodes. Please don't let that happen to you or me or anyone else. So it tells you what budget you can work within, and that's important. It also does a couple of other things, and we'll give you some examples. I recently had a very sweet buyer who is now under contract, so that is a wonderful thing. This buyer came to me and they had a pre-approval letter, and I called that lender. And y'all, you're welcome to use whatever lender you like, but I am here to tell you that some are better, much better than others. And your local bank, y'all, I'm sure they are great at the savings and the loans and all the things that they specialize in. But you really want to work with somebody who specializes in mortgages. That is super important because they are complicated, and if something gets off track, it can ruin everything. And I have seen it happen more than once with sweet little local banks. So, y'all, I had somebody come, like I was telling you, I had somebody come, and they had a pre-approval letter with a local bank, and I called that local banker, and I knew right away that he had not a clue about mortgages. In fact, this pre-approval letter was for a USDA loan. And y'all, do you think that those are being funded during the shutdown? And do you think the real estate agent should know that and the lender doesn't know that, and the agent should be telling the lender that? The lender should know that. That's the lender's job. I just happen to get my geek on with things like lending and finance because, my undergrad was in accounting. That's my thing. But this lender didn't even know that they could not put an offer in and have a USDA loan funded during a government shutdown. Not a thing. So I knew right away that this lender did not have a lot of experience and really didn't know very much when it came to mortgages. I was able to talk with my folks and get them pre-approved with somebody that really does know a lot about mortgages because they do it day in and day out. And come to find out, they really did not need to be spending at the level that this other bank had told them. So we had to find something much less expensive. You see, that was mistake number 2 from the sweet little local bank. So y'all, it's important. It's important. Pre-approval is very important. Can I say that again? And also that same situation, come to find out, these sweet buyers did not realize how much it cost between a down payment and closing costs. Y'all, it's not cheap. You can't do it with no money. So we had to get super creative and work with a lender who knew their stuff to figure out, how can we get some down payment assistance? How can we do this without having a down payment? Because that's not easy. That is not easy. So we got all that figured out. They're in a contract. That lender is well on their way to getting everything funded, and they will close and move in their home and be super happy. I had another example where these sweet people, I was on the selling side, and these sweet people just went to their local bank and said that they were going to get the loan, and the day before closing, nope. The local bank didn't have the paper signed that they needed to. They didn't, so we put closing another day off, and it didn't happen again because the bank didn't know what they were doing. And then 2 more days later, we were going to have closing, and didn't work out local bank couldn't do it. So I stepped in, even though I have the seller, brought my lenders in, who are amazing. They've saved the deal, but we have to wait 2 more weeks to close so that, they can go through the process of getting financing together for these buyers. So y'all, I'm speaking to agents now because this was a sweet agent that got duped by this bank. Agents, we all need to be making sure these lenders are solid and that the pre-approval letters are legit and that the lending can actually happen, because that lending is the number one thing to ruin a deal. Number one thing. So I know I have preached and I am sorry, but this is just on my heart lately because I've been dealing with 3 separate occasions where it matters. Pre-approval matters. It matters because you're going to save heartache in the end. You're going to know what you can really shop for, and your agent is going to know the kind of deals that they need to put together. So for example, the one where my folks didn't have the money for a down payment or closing costs or any of the things. Well, I was able to negotiate a deal where $10,000 in closing costs were covered for these sweet buyers. But would I have known that had to be done had we not been through this process with pre-approval? No. And that could have caused a real mess, right? So it matters who your lender is. It matters whether or not you've gotten pre-approval from the start. And y'all, I'm telling you now, as somebody who mainly works with sellers, if somebody doesn't have a pre-approval in hand when they hand us that offer, there's no way. There's no way. Because without a guarantee that the lender is going to come through at closing and that you're going to be able to pay for that house, that's a huge risk for a seller to take, not knowing that. So recently I had some buyers who told me that they don't want to get pre-approved until they find the perfect house. Well, guess what? I've shared with these sweet people that you may miss out on your perfect house, because if that really, really perfect house does come on the market, you're not the only one who wants it. And so if you have an offer or two that has pre-approval and then you're having to wait a day to get that pre-approval, you could miss out. So guys, please choose a great lender and get pre-approved. It will save all of us a ton of heartache in the end. All right, friends, for all things real estate, I am your trusted real estate broker, Susan Nunamaker, Posh Properties Realty Group, 864-722-2065. And if you choose to work with me, I will make sure that you have pre-approval before we start shopping, because it is so important, my friends.